think I was burning something like 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. This month, everything is injured. And then I saw like blood falling onto the floor in a dark cave, and I was like, oh, this is not good. I may have done some damage here.
Welcome to Project Monthly Marathon, where I attempt to run a marathon every single month as someone who has no idea what they're doing when it comes to running. In today's video, we're going to run through exactly what happened leading up to my 4th marathon. Enjoy.
All right, it is time to train for marathon number 4. But before we do that, let's review what happened in marathon number 3. So, big spoiler alert, because I'm going to reveal everything that happened in marathon number 3. If you haven't watched that, go and watch that. I'll leave it up here somewhere. All right, spoiler time. Here's what happened in marathon number 3. So our time went from 4 hours 42 moving time in marathon number 2 to 4 hours 38 moving time in marathon number 3. So a 4-minute PB or improvement in my moving time. However, my total running time went from 6 hours 13 in marathon number 2 to 5 hours and 2 minutes in marathon number 3. So it was over a 1 hour improvement in moving time. Obviously, marathon number 2, if you haven't watched it, I was cramping brutally. I had to stop, go and buy carbohydrates, contemplate quitting. It was brutal. This one was a lot better. And one of the big goals for this marathon was to not cramp. And we did it. We didn't cramp at all for this marathon. Or I mean, we cramped a little bit at like kilometer 41, but kind of irrelevant considering the fact that my first 2 marathons I cramped for 20 kilometers. The reason, apart from the fact that obviously cramping for 20 kilometers is just really uncomfortable, brutal, the reason I didn't want to cramp is so I could find the next efficiency. What's the next problem that I can solve so I can run marathons better? And we have an answer. We have new issues, new problems to fix. So here is the problem. And I actually think that this is the reason I was cramping. And that is that I'm just not fit enough. Shocker. But let me explain. So what basically happens is when you're running at high heart rates, at high zones 4 and 5, what happens is your body is depleting its glycogen stores really quickly. All of the sugar, all the glucose you have in your body's using it really, really quickly when you're in these high heart rates. When you're in the lower heart rates, your body's using a little bit more of its fat. It's still using a bit of the carbohydrates, of the glucose, but it's using a combination of both. And if your body is using a crazy amount of carbohydrates, then it depletes really quickly, and this is what causes the cramping. So because I was wearing my Whoop, I got to see what my heart rates were doing throughout the marathon, and it was pretty interesting. So I asked Dr. ChatGPT, what heart rates am I supposed to be in throughout the marathon, throughout the run? And this is what it told me. So for zone 1, you want to be between 5 and 10% of the run. For zone 2, you want to be 40 to 50%. For zone 3, you want to be 35 to 45%. For zone 4, you want to be 5 to 10%. And for zone 5, you want to be 1 to 2%. So these are the percentages of time that you're spending in different heart rates throughout the run. This is how I was doing. This was what my heart rates were throughout the run. So my zone 1 was 5%, which is on the lower end of what I should be. So that was fine, no problems. My zone 2, however, was 10%. So my zone 2 should be between 40 to 50. It was only 10%, so it was incredibly low. So I wasn't spending nearly enough time in zone 2. My zone 3 was 43%, which is that upper end of where I should be, so that was no problems. Zone 3 was good. Here is where the problem lies. My zone 4. Remember, target for zone 4 is 5 to 10%. The time I spent in zone 4 was 35% of the marathon. I spent over 2 hours in zone 4. So this is nearly 4 times what I should be doing in zone 4. Now, of course, this means that I'm depleting my glycogen stores really quickly, along with the fact it's just really painful to be in zone 4 for, I think it was 2.5 hours. So pretty brutal. Zone 5 was at 4%, which is double what it should be. But the main issue is I was spending a huge amount of time in zone 4 and not enough time in zone 2. So clearly my fitness, my aerobic base is just not good enough to be running at the speed that I'm currently running. So what is the plan for this? Well, the plan to fix this is to just get more volume in, particularly more volume at that low heart rate, at that zone 2 rate. The more time I can spend at that zone 2, the more I can increase the pace at which I can maintain at that lower heart rates. Because for this next marathon, I want to be hitting my heart rates a little bit closer to what they should be. So I want to be spending at least quadruple the time in zone 2 that I was spending in the last marathon. And I want to be spending nearly 4 times less in zone 4. So this basically means that I'm going to have to increase my fitness, my aerobic base, but also probably just reduce the speed, reduce the pace that I'm running, because I'm probably just running a little bit faster than I should be for these marathons. Hence why they've been so tough. I mean, not only have I been brutally cramping for the first 2 for 20Ks, but it was also just probably too fast for my actual level of fitness. I was just completely willpowering, going crazy for these last 3 marathons really. So the big thing for me is how much time can I spend in zone 2, improving that aerobic base, and then also probably just pacing myself better. Going out the gates a little slower, trying to stay in that zone 2 heart rate for a bit longer so that I can actually sustain a pace for a longer period of time. Don't deplete my glycogen super quickly. So that is the plan for this round. I'm going to try and drop the pace a bit, spend a bunch of time in zone 2 and see if we can have a easier marathon this time. Just not deplete the glycogen so quickly, spend a bit more time in zone 2. So that's the plan. Hopefully this month I'm going to get a crazy amount of zone 2 done. Let's see what happens if I do that. Week 1 of marathon training done, and to be honest, it wasn't the best week for me. So 2 days after the marathon, I was doing a leg day with a few friends. One is a physio and one's broken his leg a bunch of times. And I noticed that I had a bit of pain on the top of my foot. I talked to them about it. I was saying, I've got a bit of this pain. And they were asking me a few questions like, where is it? It's kind of on the bone here. It's like, does it feel painful around it? They asked a bunch of questions and they basically both came to the conclusion that it is showing signs of what could be a stress fracture if I continue to apply a bunch of pressure from the running to it. So what this basically means is that I'm not going to be able to run for 2 weeks was the general diagnosis. We'll see how that goes, but essentially it's going to be 2 weeks without running. That being said, I've been able to spend a bit of time on the bike and I haven't noticed pain in my foot. However, I did have something called cyclist knee, which I had towards the end of the last training block, which is essentially a overuse injury, a bit of pain in my knee, specifically when I'm cycling. So I have an overuse injury on the knee from cycling and an overuse injury in the foot from the running, which is unfortunate. This week I was able to get in maybe 3 or 4 hours on the bike and the knee was a little painful. It was okay. I can kind of get through it. I rested for the first 5 days without cycling at all. Then the last few days I did a bit of cycling. So realistically, I need to get a bunch of zone 2 in. That is the deficiency, is the aerobic base. So we want to try and build up the aerobic base, get a bunch of zone 2 in, which I can get done on the bike, which is actually how I've been getting my zone 2 in the past few marathon preps. So I'm going to have to keep pushing the bike, and I might have a little bit of soreness in the knee, but that hasn't really translated to any soreness when I'm running. So I'm kind of going to have to push through it a bit. If it gets super painful, I'm just not going to do anything, because the worst thing I can possibly do is create any sort of long-term injury, which is going to take me out of the game for ages. The goal is to do 1 marathon a month. If it has to be a difficult marathon, it has to be a difficult marathon. I don't want to create any injuries to myself, but basically the plan is next week I'm going to do as much cycling as I possibly can, but it's going to be another week of not running, which is not ideal. I'm trying to run marathons. I'm not able to run. Not great, but I have to work with what I have right now, and what I have is the ability to cycle with a small degree of pain and the inability to run. So I'm just gonna have to cycle as much as possible, relatively pain-free, and see how much I can get done. So this week has not been the best week for the marathon training, but we gotta do what we gotta do. Next week, we'll try and get a bunch of work in on the bike, and that's it. Week 2 of training complete. No running again this week. 0 running. However, it wasn't 0 cardio. We actually got a crazy amount of cardio in this week. I turned into prime Lance Armstrong, minus the PEDs, unfortunately. But we went pretty crazy on the bike this week. So we did 370 kilometers of cycling. I was on the bike between 2 to 5 hours a day, just getting a bunch of cycling in. It's going to be good for building the aerobic base, getting a bunch of zone 2 in, which is hopefully going to be helpful when it comes to the run, to making sure our heart rate is in a decent, stable level. I want to be spending a lot more time in zone 2 this marathon, a lot less time in zone 4. So hopefully this is going to really help with that. You might be wondering, well, didn't you say that you had a cyclist knee problem from the last training? And yeah, that is true. So 2 weeks ago, I self-diagnosed from Dr. ChatGPT myself with cyclist knee, which is basically a knee pain irritation caused by cycling too much, building up the cycling, progressing the cycling too quickly, and causing pain in the knee. So that is true, and that has not gone away. It's actually quite painful, and it's actually progressed to my other knee as well. The way I look at it is cyclist knee is not going to hurt me in the running, or at least I hope it's not. It generally only pops up when I'm cycling. So my plan is basically I can't run. Essentially can't run for this entire prep. I'll see how I go next week, but likely I won't be able to run for this entire prep because of my foot problem, which could progress into a stress fracture if I don't take a bit of time off. And I'm probably going to be hurting myself if I spend a huge amount of time on the bike. So the plan is basically put all of my training volume into the bike this week, and then next week I'm probably just going to do nothing in terms of cardio. I might do a bit of cycling on Monday or on Tuesday, but I'm going to take most of the week off. Hopefully this allows my knees to completely recover. Hopefully by then my foot is recovered, but this was just a huge week of cardio. I think I was burning something like 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. So the fuel price has increased. I've had to buy myself a few more groceries, but it was hopefully a good week for the training. I'm really not sure. It's hard to tell how much the cycling is transferring over to the running, especially considering I can't run, but that's what the week looked like. It was a huge amount of cycling. Yes, I did a bit of damage to my knees. I'm not going to lie. It was probably not good for my knees. Next week, I'm probably not going to be able to do anything, but I hope that has helped contribute to some sort of cardio base in a month where realistically, this might be one of my worst months of training in terms of, it's hard to tell because my second month of training, I was in 4 continents in 4 weeks. The environment wasn't ideal, but I wasn't injured. This month, everything is injured. So it's very hard for me to do anything. So that's what I did this week. We'll see what happens next week, but probably going to be nothing. Also, you may have noticed that my face is looking a little interesting right now. So on Friday, we went camping, had a little camping trip. We had a 20K hike actually exactly halfway through the hike. At the halfway point, there is a cool little cave that you can check out, that you can go into. So we thought, fellas, let's go check out the cave. Let me record this. Let me get this on camera. So I recorded the boys walking into the cave, and then I did a little selfie video of myself entering the cave, and I ate a whole lot of turd. I basically headbutted a rock. It was painful, but I was like, okay, this is a bit weird. And then I saw like blood falling onto the floor in a dark cave, and I was like, oh, this is not good. I may have done some damage here. So I basically split my my eyebrow area open. We got out of the cave and I got pretty lightheaded. So sat down on the rock, and after about 10 minutes, I tried to stand up again, very lightheaded, sat down, passed out for a few minutes, may have slept off the concussion a bit. And then, well, you're in the middle of the bush in Australia, so we had to just walk back. So I had to basically finish the 10K hike with a medium-sized flesh wound on my face, got back to the campsite, and then just business as usual, just finished the camp trip and then got back. It seems to be recovering okay, but that's why my face looks a bit weird. So I guess that's another thing I did for the cardio. We did a 20K hike and I smashed my face off a rock. But yeah, that's it. That's what I did for the week. It was a very eventful week. Yeah, we'll see what happens next week. It's week number 3 and I have a big decision to make. So last week I completely cooked my knees from cycling 370 Ks, even though I already had a small overuse injury from the cycling. So I had cyclist knee in my left knee. I now have cyclist knee in my left knee and my right knee. It's a little bit painful. However, hopefully it doesn't really affect my running too much. I never really noticed that it was a problem when it came to running. I haven't been running at all for this entire training block. The last time I ran was running the marathon because I had some foot pain right on the bones on the top of my feet. I talked to some friends who know what they're talking about and they said it's probably the start of a stress fracture. So I've basically taken 3 weeks off the running completely. So I have a big decision here. I can either push the marathon, this marathon for the month of October, back to the end of October, get it done just in the nick of time. That'll allow me to get a proper training block in, recover from my injuries, and be ready to do a very, very solid marathon. Or I can do the marathon at the very beginning of October. I can make sure that I've run it at the very start of October. This gives me a second chance if I need to do it all over again, and it allows me to be doing my marathons at the very start of every month, which is what I want to do anyway. Hopefully, and I don't think my injuries are actually going to prevent me from being able to run this marathon. Obviously, my training hasn't been as good. It won't be as fast of a marathon, but it will allow me to get the marathon done at the very start of October, and it gives me the chance to get a second go at it if for some reason I can't run it properly. So I think what I'm going to do is that. I think what I'm going to do is run this marathon this Sunday. Yeah, so I think I'm going to run the marathon this Sunday. I think that's the decision that I'm going to go for. This basically means that the last time I ran was the marathon, so I'm going to be running a marathon directly after my marathon before with 0 running training in between. Small amounts of injuries, which I can hopefully get through, but I think this is a play. I think this is what I'm going to do is just concede the fact that this is not going to be a good training block, that this is probably not going to be my best marathon, but just get it done at the start of the month and get myself in that routine of being able to do a marathon every month at the start of every month. Because if I can do it at the start of every month, then I always have a buffer of 3 to 4 weeks to hit it again, attempt it again, if I actually get a more serious, more problematic injury. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. For the rest of this week, I'm going to do absolutely nothing except for run a marathon. So there's probably not anything else to document. So I'm probably going to end this video here. This is how I trained for marathon number 4. Pretty disastrous training. I said this in my last video, but I'm a beginner runner. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to train for marathons. I'm not fit enough to be running marathons. I do it because I can, because it would be interesting for the story. Do not follow anything I do. Don't take any of my advice when it comes to running marathons. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just documenting the journey through hopefully becoming not such a bad runner, running a marathon every month, even if I shouldn't be running a marathon a month. So this is what the training looked like. Pretty disastrous training block, but there you go. So I'm going to see you in a few weeks, or I'm going to see you in a few seconds, depending on when you're seeing this, where I'm going to run a marathon after, in all honesty, a disastrous training block. So wish me luck, and I'll see you then.